You worked on the Concorde?
I did. I needed a little bit of a push to do it, but it's probably one of the best things I ever did in my career. I have met some incredible people, from heads of state to royalty. Everybody says if we're going to have a cup of tea on an aircraft, it's got to be on a BA aircraft because we make the best cup of tea. And I think that kind of nails it. I actually get quite emotional about flying because I feel like that's where I'm meant to be.
So, Julie, hello, welcome to the Airliners Live studio. You're a British Airways cabin crew, right?
In-flight manager, yeah.
In-flight manager.
Yeah, have to have the title.
And in-flight manager, is there some kind of progression in, like, the cabin crew? Is there, like, do you start as, like, you can't really do much and you've got to, like, shadow people and then you work your way up over time? And I guess you can work your way up to the aircraft as well, maybe?
Yeah, you start as what they're called these days as main crew. So when you come straight out of training, you're main crew. And then on each aircraft, on a long haul aircraft anyway, you will have, say for example, on a 350, for example, you'll have 10 main crew. Then you'll have the next step up is an in-flight lead, which is the same as the old purser role. And they will normally be in charge of the economy cabins. And then you'll have an in-flight manager that has overall charge of the aircraft from the flight deck door down. Yeah. And over all the crew. So that's what an in-flight manager does.
And how long have you been at British Airways for?
On and off since 1976.
76, wow. So you've been through, I guess, what some people would call the golden age.
Yeah.
But I did notice, I think it was in an article on The Sun or something, where I think you and I kind of agree that the golden age isn't just strictly back then. I think there's elements of it these days. There's bits of flight and flying that are still super glamorous, and obviously it's more accessible as well for people as well these days, whereas back then it was a bit more of an exclusive experience.
I think it wasn't open to the masses back then. It was a little bit more elitist. But if you think about it, if you look at the comfort that we've got on an aircraft now, so, you know, we've got first class suites, we've got the club suites, we've got World Traveller Plus, which is a really comfortable seat, and you've also got the economy seats, which, you know, if you compare them to back in the day, luxury-wise, I think it's now 100%. But the golden age, I think, was because it was more elitist, less people travel, people dressed up more to travel. But now anyone can travel, you know, and you've got so much choice. Catering-wise, I mean, it couldn't be better than it is now.
I mean, dressing up, I mean, if you're going to be on a plane for 8-9 hours, you want to be in something comfy, don't you? I'm usually there wearing joggers and a jumper and a hoodie, you know, like.
Yeah.
And I noticed the cabin crew uniforms have changed as well, like
dramatically.
Yeah, they used to wear like ties, and it's kind of like the, you know, some elements of that still, but are they more comfy now?
Much more comfy now. I mean, when I first joined, we had white gloves.
Gloves? Wow.
White gloves, that's
the
Queen.
Old school. Yeah.
So we used to have these little white gloves. My first uniform was a Hardy Amos uniform, which was back in the 70s, who was the Queen's tailor, whatever you'd like to call him. So yeah, we had this little pillbox hat, we had white gloves, and we used to give out newspapers in those days. So you can imagine white gloves giving out newspapers. Yeah. They didn't stay white for very long. But yeah, I mean, the uniforms, the new BA uniform is my 6th BA uniform.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I've only worn it on 2 flights so far, but very, very comfortable.
Yeah.
Very comfortable indeed.
Yeah, because you're on, you do, what kind of flights do you do? Is it like long haul, short?
We all do mixed flying these days. We're all one big fleet at Heathrow. So we all do mixed flying. We have a preferential bidding system, so you can bid for what you prefer to do. You don't always get it because obviously there's only so many flights and so many people, but I prefer to do long haul. I spent many years on Eurofleet, so I feel like I've done my fair share of short haul flying. So my preference is long haul, but we're licensed for both.
Why do you prefer long haul?
That's a very good question. Why do I prefer long haul? I like a dual aisle aircraft. I like working on a dual aisle aircraft. I like having the time to do things properly.
Yeah.
I like doing a premium service.
So
I like that time, where you can, I mean, there's nothing wrong with short haul at all. It does what it says on the tin, and it gets you from A to B really quickly. And, you've still got the choice of a business cabin and an economy cabin and all of that. But I think for me now, especially at my age, I like that leisurely service. I like to do things with the time. I like to build the relationship. I like to talk to people, and you can really do that on a long haul flight. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it on a short haul flight, because you can.
Yeah.
But it's much more quick and snappy.
Yeah.
Whereas on a long haul flight, you've got that time to invest.
Yeah, I found that, 'cause I was just saying with you earlier that we flew to Austin with BA, and your like cabin crew around you really connect with, and you have time to talk to them and hang out with them almost. And whereas on a short flight, an hour to 4 hours, say, you don't really get that same experience, like intimate experience. It's more just, pass and go, and say hi, and you'll see them on the way out. But it's more of like you actually kind of almost make friends for like that period of time. It's weird.
Exactly. And sometimes you do keep in contact with people. I mean, there've been people that I've met on flights that were customers, and I'm still in touch with them years later, which is really lovely. And you do end up with relationships around the world. There's places that I go and I think, I can go and see so and so, or it's just a lovely thing to be able to do.
What a good networking job that is. You must get like celebrities, and you must get like sort of high name business people on and stuff, and do you know who that is? And that's so and so.
Yeah. Over the years, I've been so lucky. I have met some incredible people. Yeah. From heads of state to royalty to celebrities. I can remember back on Concorde, my Concorde days, because we had regulars on. You would have people that travelled on a weekly basis, and you really did build a relationship, and you would know what they would want to drink, how they would want to spend the flight, so you could preempt that, and they didn't even have to ask. So David Frost was one of my fond memories, because he always used to like to have a red wine, maybe some cheese, and we used to have the Prince Charles crackers on board, so I knew that that's all he would want. And he would just be like a friend, which is amazing.
Concorde, right? You mentioned that. That's kind of your social media name as well, Concorde Julie.
Yes, it is.
Why is that your social media name? Is that because that's your favourite aircraft, or is that the golden eras of when you were working?
I don't know really why it's my Instagram name. I think I've got my husband to blame for that, because it was his idea. I think I wanted something that was a little bit unique, that would identify me and my time on Concorde. But I mean, there's so much more that I've done in my career. So it just seemed to fit, it just seemed to roll off the tongue, and it stuck. Somebody did suggest Jumbo Julie, which I objected to.
Jumbo Julie, that sounds like it could have bad
I love
connotations.
The 7-4 as well, but somebody did suggest Jumbo Julie. I was like, no, we'll stick with Concorde Julie. Yeah,
I love Concorde Julie. It rolls off the tongue as well.
Yeah,
I don't know
it does,
why.
Doesn't it?
But so you worked on the Concorde?
I did.
That's wild. That's
for many, many years.
I didn't even get to see it up close, let alone, other than on the static ones you can see, let alone be on it or work on it. And you must have flown on it a fair few times. I
did, I was on it for almost 10 years. And
wow.
It was one of those fleets that you had to be a certain level of seniority before you could even apply to go on it, because obviously it was a very, very small fleet as far as cabin crew and pilots were concerned. So you had to be a certain level of seniority. You had to wait for there to be space before you could apply. And then once you applied to go on it, you had to be suitable. You had to have like an interview, I suppose you call it. So I did that after I'd been flying 10 years. Some friends of mine said, oh, you need to get on. We used to affectionately call it the rocket because it was so fast. So you need to go on the rocket. And I was, I don't know. So I'm not very good with change. And a really good friend of mine, she said, you need to apply. You need to get on it. So I did it, got on it, and did my first flight and thought, oh my God, what have I done? Because it was so different. And the takeoff was so impressive.
Oh, really?
And so different to what I was used to. I mean, it was fast. And I got to New York and I thought, I'm not sure I like New York. Now I love it, obviously. So it was one of those that I needed a little bit of a push to do it, but it's probably one of the best things I ever did in my career.
One thought I had was with Concorde, obviously, you're doing long-haul flying in a short amount of time.
Very.
As cabin crew, is that like considered a long-haul flight? Do you treat it like a long-haul flight? Do you have like your extra days rest and stuff? Or?
No. It was in those days when I was on it. It was part of what we know as Eurofleet, so it was the short-haul operation. So in those days, we used to do a 6-day block and have 3 days off. So a typical roster, if you were on the Concorde fleet, because you weren't just on Concorde, you were also, I was on the 737 and the 757 at the time, so you have 3 licenses. So in those days, typically, you do your Concorde flight on your first 2 days. So a typical week's roster would be maybe the early or the late New York on day 1, come back on day 2, and then maybe a Roman back on day 3, or I don't know, a Larnaca night stop on day 4 and 5. So it was built into your block. But on some weeks, if you got things that weren't quite going to plan, you could do your New York and back and then have a standby, and then you could get caught for a New York and back. Obviously, it's a 2-day trip. We don't go there and back, or didn't go there and back. And then on day 4, 5 and 6, you could technically do another one.
Wow.
So you could have technically gone to New York and back 3 times in 1 week.
Wow. And you say it was a 2-day trip on the Concorde for you. That means you get there sort of in the afternoon, I guess.
Yeah, for example, if you were on the early, you took off about 10:30 out of Heathrow. You land in New York at 9:30, so you'd gain an hour, which blows your mind, doesn't it?
That's mental.
And then you would have a full 24 hours in New York before coming back. And occasionally we had 3-day trips if it was over like a holiday or New Year's Eve or something like that. There were a group of us that used to always volunteer to do New Year's Eve, same crew every year. Yeah, I think we did it for about 8 years because we all wanted Christmas Day off. So we used to say, right, well, we'll have Christmas Day off, we'll volunteer to do New Year's Eve. And that was quite special because we were always together. And I remember one year we had a 3-day New York over New Year's Eve and came back empty, which was quite good fun, just having the crew on the aircraft, flying back from New York on a Concorde away south.
That's nuts. So how has that changed then? Because you went from the Concorde flying long haul, I assume some other aircraft as well.
Yeah, 73 and 75 at the time.
Yeah. So when you go on to the more modern sort of long haul flights, then now if you did New York, would that still be like a 2-day stop?
We do have one that's a 2-day. The very early, I believe, is a 2-day. You still get 24 hours down route. The others are typically 3 days. So I mean, we've got about 7 or 8 New York flights a day. So they range from, I think, about 8:10 in the morning right the way through till late afternoon, early evening. So most of those are 3-day trips. So a lot of flying to New York. Yeah,
I'm just still baffled about the difference between flying on the Concorde, where it's just, like you said, you gain an hour when you go there.
Yeah.
That must be, is that nicer on jet lag, is it, do you find? Or is that harder? Because
I think probably on the New Yorks, we tended to stay on, your body clock tends to stay on UK time, even though you do stay up far later in New York because you're not going to miss an evening in New York. So yeah, because it was quite easy because we weren't there that long and it was only a 5-hour time change. Yeah, I think we managed. I don't remember ever having jet lag when I was on the Concorde fleet at all. But nowadays, obviously, I do get jet lag. I'm a bit older as well, which probably doesn't help.
Was there like a certain like magic feeling when you got past the speed of sound on the Concorde?
There was also a small nudge in the small of your back when they used to start the reheats to go through the process of going supersonic. The flight crew often used to do a little PA and say, you know, the afterburners are now on. I mean, please don't quote me on any of the technicalities because I'm probably not getting it 100% right. But my understanding is it was when we went through the speed of sound. If you were standing up in the cabin, it felt like somebody had just given you that little push in the small of your back. So there was like a little bit of a feeling as you went supersonic and you went through the speed of sound.
Was it like a change of atmosphere, like the passengers all got excited? And
if you did a charter flight, yes, very much so. If you did a scheduled flight, obviously they were regulars most of the time, and they, you know, were quite blasé about it because they were so used to it. But if you did a charter flight, there was a real atmosphere of euphoria in the cabin. Everyone was just like waiting for that moment. And when you used to do charter flights, you used to have an extra pilot that used to do commentary so that every step of the journey, they were being told what was happening. So he would be on, or we only had one female pilot on Concorde, so most of the time he would be on the PA saying what was going to happen next. And as soon as you went through the speed of sound, there would be like cheers and champagne clinking, and everyone would be quite excited. So yeah, it was a nice atmosphere.
Because I think that's like the real magic of aviation, is things like that and the experience in technology. Because that was a while ago as well. Like even to today's standards, we don't have supersonic airliners anymore.
No.
Do you think there ever will be another supersonic aircraft?
I don't know. I know there are a few things, you know, in the pipeline that I get to hear about, but I'm not sure if we ever will now. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure something will happen in the future, but we've got so much amazing technology now with newer aircraft. And like I say, I'm not an engineer, no pilot experience apart from flying a Cessna out of here once. So, you know, don't quote me, but I get the impression that technology is just soaring at the moment. You know, you walk in the flight deck. I'm lucky I can go in and out of the flight deck. I walk in the flight deck sometimes on the A350 or the 787, and you look at the technology in the flight deck, and you know, it just blows my mind, especially when you see things like the head-up display and all of that, because I am a bit of an aviation geek, as you probably gathered. So I'm like, what's that do and what's this doing? And it's just incredible what they can do with aircraft these days.
Has that technology changed your life at all in the plane? Have you, like, are the galleys more modern, and are things that used to be a pain now just not existent anymore? Is there anything in particular that...
When I first started flying, you're not going to believe this, we didn't even make fresh tea and coffee on the aircraft. We had a plug-in urn that would be full of tea or coffee.
Right.
And you used to have to pour it out, whereas now obviously we've got quite sophisticated beverage makers. In first class we've got an espresso machine, you know, a cappuccino machine. So we've got ovens. You know, we didn't have ovens when I joined. It was a same sort of thing. It was an oven that came on that slotted in to an electrical point and just kept the food warm, whereas now we can cook the food properly. You know, in first class we cook the food on board. We've got steam ovens that can do dry heat, and bread ovens and all sorts, you know. So technology-wise, in the galleys, just a whole nother level. And from my perspective, in my role, obviously, I have lighting controls and I have the video to control, and the, you know, all the different settings for things like announcements, like pre-recorded announcements. In my day, I had to learn the emergency announcement off by heart, whereas nowadays we've got a pre-recorded announcement. I just press a button.
Yeah.
So, it changed a lot.
Yeah. You must have flown to a lot of countries at this point.
Yes.
Could you name all the countries?
No.
There's probably so many.
I don't think... I mean, obviously I haven't been to every country in the world, but I've been to every continent in the world.
Yeah.
every major city in the world. There's not many places that I haven't been.
And how does it work in like your job? Do you said you bid for certain places?
Yeah.
So do you go to places that you like, obviously, but does that always happen, or sometimes you get like something really random? And
Oh, exactly that. It's called preferential bidding. So you can give them your preferences, but obviously they've got a certain amount of flights to cover. So we can't all go to Singapore. We can't all go to LA.
yeah.
So, the route structure's so vast now that you get, some of your bids, and then you get other things that are just slotted in. So, for example, this month I bid for LA. I got one LA, and then I had other flights. I went to Denver and somewhere else. I can't remember. They all blend into one. And then next month, for example, my top bid was Cape Town. So I've got my top bid, Cape Town, but I've also got 2 Newarks and a Montreal, which I didn't bid for, but they're all great flights,
Why Cape Town? Do you like it there?
Why Cape Town? It was one of my favourite trips on the 747, and I haven't managed to get back to Cape Town since pre-COVID, since my last flight to Cape Town was on the 74. Cape Town is an amazing destination. And obviously at this time of year it's going into their summer, so you get away from the cold. They also do the most incredible food and wine. It's a stunning destination if you ever get the chance to go.
You must find all these like hidden gems, like you said, probably everyone bids for the LAs, and like you said, Singapore's probably all the made like New York and stuff.
It's actually quite interesting when you speak to other crew. There are some people that say, oh, you like LA? Oh, no, I can't stand LA. And I'm like, really? So I think because we are all so different, it kind of all evens out. There are some people that love flights that I would never bid for. And they look at me and say, oh, you like LA? Why do you like LA? So I think it's like everything in life, isn't it? It would be a bit weird if we all like the same thing. So everybody's got different preferences. I flew with a guy this week. He does not want to do long haul. He just wants to do short haul. So that's nice because we've all got that opportunity now to do whichever we prefer. We might not always get it, but that keeps the variety and it keeps things fresh, I think, in a way.
You were saying before we started that you've got 5 kids and you still fly long haul. How on earth do you balance, or have you balanced that?
Well, like I was saying to you, our youngest is now 22, so they have all flown the nest. But back in the day, it was a case of having to be really organised and having a really good support system at home. Over the years, I've had different support systems from when I lived in the south to when I live up in Cheshire. So parents-in-law, a good husband, and as they got older, the older ones, used to help as well. And I always used to feel guilty as a working mum. I always felt guilty. And when they've got to a certain age, I've said to them, did you ever feel neglected or anything like that? And they were like, oh my goodness, no. We had things from around the world that other children never had. When there's been phases of certain toys, I used to bring them back from New York and you couldn't get them in this country. So a daft story, my daughter went through a phase of loving Converse when she was about 15 or 16, I think. And they were super expensive over here. And I used to bring her back all these different colour Converse and they would be super cheap in the States at the time. So I don't think they ever resented me flying.
They're probably quite inspired by what you did. Like, my mum travels the world for a living. And
I'm not so sure about that. I think they kind of, if I mention anything aviation related, they kind of go, yeah, we did it all before. And I used to do this thing where as they got older and they started to travel on their own, I would say, right, before you get on the aircraft, you need to know where the exits are. You need to know where this is. You need to do that. Yeah, Mum, we know. You tell us 100 times, we know where the exits are. We know where my life jacket is. But I was always nagging them about it.
Yeah.
But I have got one daughter who she flew for BA for a year, and I think she gets my passion. But I think the others are just like, yeah, whatever. They're not really that interested.
What do you think sparked your passion, though? Do you think, have you just always liked planes, or did you used to? I remember Captain Mark on the last one saying that he used to go plane spotting as a little kid, and that really set him off.
That really resonated when I listened to him say that, because growing up, I lived about 4 or 5 miles from Heathrow.
Oh, wow.
And I grew up in a cul-de-sac where I was the only girl. So all my childhood friends were boys, and used to be able to see the aircraft taking off. Depending on the runway, they used to fly around. We backed onto a paddock, and you could see aircraft taking off from Heathrow depending on which runway they were using. And then I think when we were about probably 10, maybe a bit younger, because you were allowed out in those days, we just used to get on our bikes every weekend, go up to Queen's Building, like Captain Mark was saying, and just spend all day there. And we used to have these books where you ticked off the registration of aircraft once you'd seen it. You used to get your highlighter pen and, yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah, I've seen that one. And we just used to do that every single weekend.
You did that as a kid?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I was about 8 or 9, maybe 10, I can't remember. And we literally just used to cycle up to Heathrow.
Yeah.
And then after that, I had 2 cousins who I had quite a lot of aviation family members who worked at Heathrow. I had an uncle that was an engineer for TWA. My other uncle, he worked for BP as a refueler. My other cousin was in charge of all BA's cleaning at the time. His sister worked in staff travel for 45 years. She worked for British Airways 45 years. But then I had 2 cousins who were both about 10 or 12 years older than me. And they were both cabin crew, or air hostesses as they called them back in the day. And one of them flew for BOAC. And I used to sit with her when she was getting ready for a trip. And she was getting ready for a New York trip one day. And my mum and dad and I were dropping her at Heathrow. So she was packing her bag, and I was saying to her, that's really what I want to do and everything else. And she was telling me what I would need to do to be cabin crew. And she tapped on my nails, and at the time I bit my fingernails, and she said, you'll never be cabin crew if you bite your nails. And I literally stopped biting my nails overnight.
Yeah.
And painted my nails from that day, and literally 5 years later I got to be cabin crew.
Do you think the glamour was inspiring as well, of like the romance of flying around the world at that time?
I don't know what it was. I think it was being a typical aviation geek. It was being on an aircraft.
Yeah.
And at the time, you'll laugh at this, I was actually terrified of flying.
Okay.
So when we did travel, we used to go to Spain on holidays with British Air Tours, I think it was. And I used to literally sit there white-knuckled. I wouldn't leave my seat. I wouldn't go to the toilet. I was terrified. So when I actually did my training course, I was only just 18. I got all ready for my first flight, and I had a Mini back in those days. And I remember getting in my Mini and driving to the airport. And apparently my mum said to my dad, she'll be back in 10 minutes, she won't do it. And they genuinely thought I wouldn't go through with it because I was too frightened of flying. But the pull to be crew, I don't know what it was or where it came from, but the pull to be crew seemed to win. And I remember coming back from my first flight, and I was just euphoric. I loved every minute of it.
It's like proper gut instinct you followed there. You just followed whatever feeling you had.
Yeah, I don't know what it was.
Yeah, and ended up in this job that you've stuck around for ages. Like,
I absolutely love it. Still to this day. I think I love it more now. I think I'm even more passionate about it now, because I get asked this question all the time. Because I've gone from being the youngest girl ever to fly for BA, allegedly, according to my employer, to obviously certainly getting towards the upper end of being 9 times out of 10 the oldest person on the aircraft. So I just absolutely love it. And I don't know what it is about it, but it's like doing your hobby for 40 plus years, and it never gets old.
Is there anything still exciting about it? Like just getting to the gate and seeing the plane for that day? Is that still exciting?
I came back from holiday recently. My husband and I obviously flew BA to Miami, and we came back from holiday. So I've been off work for a couple of weeks rather. And my first flight back, I can't even remember where it was to. I think it was Denver. And I remember messaging my husband when I got to Denver saying, I know you already know this, but I absolutely love my job. And it gives me a natural high. I just smile the whole time I'm there. I love it. I can't explain why, but it kind of is my drug. It feeds my soul. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't really do anything bad, but I'm just addicted to flying. That's my vice.
It is addictive, to be fair.
It is.
It's a dangerous addiction because it can get very expensive.
Yeah, exactly. I'm lucky I don't have to pay to go to work, but I do feel like I'm being paid to do my hobby.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. So obviously, another question I had just come to mind. What is a crew rest on a long-haul flight as well? Is that something that you use?
It's a big secret.
A big secret, yeah.
It's a big secret.
When we were flying to Austin, Sam actually got invited to see the crew rest, and I must have had a nap or something at that time. I missed it.
Did she go and see?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I think they showed her the crew rest, whatever that mysterious place is.
It varies on various aircraft. Some aircraft on shorter flights, say like a New York, might not have a crew rest bunk area. So it would have what they call a high comfort seat, which is a curtained area by one of the doors. So on shorter flights like the New York, you could have that. And obviously you get a pillow and a blanket and you take your crew rest in there. On longer long haul, we have a bunk area, which is hidden. And I can't tell you where it is.
Do you have like PJs and stuff? Yeah,
we bring our own PJs.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you bring your PJs. Depending on the length of flight, obviously. Sometimes you don't actually go to sleep. You just, maybe listen to music or read a book or watch something on your iPad. In a couple of aircraft, we've got a seat as well as the bunks. It's just a place to get away from being in front of people. And also on certain lengths of flights, we have a legal reason where we have to take so much rest. So depending on your flight time, you have to have a certain amount of rest, and that's a legal thing. And
how long will you usually get in there? We're talking half an hour, or sometimes will you get hours to yourself in there?
Yeah, for example, one of the longest flight rests I've ever had was on a flight from Singapore. And we were going the long way around. So the flight was something like 15 hours. It was a very, very long flight. And I think we got 4.5 hours crew rest.
In one go, or?
Yeah. Wow. So that's split in. Crew rest for British Airways. All airlines do their crew rest differently. For British Airways long haul, half the crew go on rest while the other ones stay on duty. And then you swap over. So the middle part of the flight is broken down into 2 lots of crew rest.
Oh, right, okay. I had no idea.
And the shortest can be sort of 40 minutes, something like that.
Just a quick breather. So it's just effectively a break, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more of a refreshment break. You have something to eat, have a cup of tea, and, you can just take yourself away from service.
And on a long haul flight, other than the crew rest, are you busy the whole flight? Are you doing stuff?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of things are you doing behind the scenes that people don't see?
Say for on a long haul flight, after first service, so obviously you've just been to Austin, so you know that we give you a drink from the bar, and then you have your main meal depending on which cabin you're in. That will vary, and then you have tea and coffee, and then after that, you guys as a passenger will tend to watch movies or go to sleep or read a book or whatever, and then for us that's when we will eat, and then crew breaks will start, crew rest will start. And so those of us that are back on duty, left on duty, we'll start sorting out things like the bars and the catering for the next service. In our premium cabins, for example, in club, we'll set up what they call the club kitchen, which is where you can help yourself to snacks and sandwiches and all things like that. We have various paperwork that we have to do. I mean, from my perspective, I have to do things like if there's anything wrong in the cabin, I have to put it in the cabin technical log for the engineers to fix. I work out the crew breaks. We have to make sure the bars are correctly counted, depending on which country we're going to. Obviously, that you have to land the bars into that country, so you have customs to deal with, so you have to do the forms for that. What other things do we have to do? Obviously, we're constantly monitoring the cabin, so we're walking around, see if anyone wants any drinks or snacks or whatever, or making sure everybody's okay, basically keeping you all well hydrated, because obviously hydration's a bit of an issue on an aircraft. So we're pretty much busy all the time. I mean, there are times on a super long flight where you might be thinking, right, what can I do now?
Yeah.
But for me personally, I tend to be on the go the whole time. The only time I really sit down is if I'm eating or report writing or filling in the technical log or something like that. But most of the time I'm on the go, walking the cabin, liaising with the flight crew, checking that they're okay, making them cups of tea. So yeah, busy pretty much all the time.
And what classes do they usually have on the standard BA long haul these days?
We've got 4 classes. So starting at the front, we have our first class cabin, but we call it first.
Mm-hmm.
And then our business class cabin is our Club World cabin. And then next, our premium economy is our World Traveller Plus cabin. And then our economy cabin is just World Traveller.
And I'm guessing the same with the progression, do the cabin crew when they first start, do they start in like economy, or do they just go straight into whatever class they get designated?
Yes, I think from memory, obviously I don't deal with people that are in training, but yeah, I think for the first couple of months they're in economy, and that's mainly to build their confidence and give them the tools that they need to then go up. But they do quite quickly. It depends on the training, how the training school is fixed for space and how the courses are scheduled, because obviously training at the moment is so busy. So I think it can vary, maybe a few months, maybe up to 12 months, I don't know exactly, but after a few months, once they've got their confidence, then they can progress into Club World. I think on short haul they can work in both cabins straight away on the short haul network. So yeah, and then after that they'll get their first training, and then they can work in all cabins.
Amazing.
But they get to choose in a briefing. They get it's a bit complicated, but they get given a position request so that they can then request which position they want to work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's rotated on a monthly basis, so it's fair. Everyone gets a choice of where they want to work.
Do people have favourites?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
and they vary enormously. You'll get some people that don't mind, they're working all cabins. There'll be other people that will prefer maybe first or club or economy.
Yeah.
So again, like when we were talking about rostering and where you want to go, everybody is so mixed, and I think that's what makes it work, because everybody doesn't want the same thing. There's lots of variety.
You're speaking of training, how do you get trained to walk on the airplane if it's turbulent?
You get advice on how to deal with turbulence, yes.
Yeah,
you do.
It always looks so so elegant when everything's shaking around, you got drinks in your hands and trying to deal with customers and get the trolley back to the galley, and sometimes you'll hit big turbulence pretty quick, and you still get a bit nervous in turbulence.
No.
Or do the passengers, like you see passengers stressing out?
Yeah, passengers do.
Yeah.
No, I never ever get nervous of turbulence.
Yeah.
No, I think because I understand what it is and the technology that makes you avoid certain areas of turbulence. I mean, they've got screens in there with weather radars and all sorts. So
Yeah.
no, I never ever get turbulence. I actually quite like it.
Yeah.
I think a bit like a roller coaster.
I know. I used to like put my headphones on and put some like rock music on or something quite intense, and you're like, "Wait, let's go!"
Yeah, exactly. I had some out of Singapore a few years ago, and it was literally straight after takeoff. And the captain rang me and said, "Stay in your seats. It's going to be bumpy." So I had to make an ad hoc PA to the passengers just to explain, and I kind of lost what I was going to say. So I said, just keep your seatbelts fastened, and in the meantime, just enjoy the ride. And there was a guy sat in row 1, and I was still on my crew seat at door 1 left, and he was sat there, and he kind of looked at me, and he just giggled, and he said, "I just love that." He said, because you're making something very positive out of something that some people might be quite nervous about. But I felt a bit embarrassed afterwards, because I thought, oh God, I hope I haven't upset anybody. But it was just the first thing that came into my mind, just enjoy the ride.
That's how you should do it, right? Like,
yeah.
No,
I never get nervous though in turbulence.
Have you got a favourite plane at the moment that you fly? I assume there's been many favourites over the years, but right now, or are they all sort of similar?
Yeah, I mean, I like them all for different reasons. I think each aircraft, we always call them she's, don't we? I mean, aircraft, any form of transport is a she. And I find them all endearing for different ways. There's something nice about every aircraft that I like, be it the shape, the look, the galley, whatever. So I haven't got a firm favourite at the moment. I like the 350 because she's very pretty, especially from the outside.
Yeah,
I do like
agree.
that winglet.
Great noise as well. And it's weird with the A350 because when they're on the ground and you're a plane spotter and you're watching them take off, it sounds amazing, the roar. But then when you're in the air, they go really quiet.
Really quiet.
And on the cabin, like sometimes you can't even hear the engines. You're walking up and down and you just hear kind of the wind noise outside, the air cons and
just
stuff.
Hear this sort of low hum, which I find quite relaxing. I do like the roar on takeoff of the triple with the GE engine, because that's got a real crackle to it.
Yeah, you still
and
fly
I've been
them?
really lucky. Yeah, I still fly those.
Yeah.
I've been really lucky that people that follow me quite often know where I'm going, and they'll record or get captured by someone like yourself or one of the other streamers, and it's quite nice when they send it to you. And there was one I think it was about 12 months ago. I was doing in Orlando on the 777 with the GE engines, and the crackle was just incredible. And the people think we're mad that we like the sound of certain aircraft engines, but no, it's great.
Yeah, we love the BA 350. We even got a die-cast model of it, like 1/200 scale of it. Like I think Sam got me for my birthday or Christmas or something, just because we were.
It's a very pretty aircraft, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very pretty aircraft.
Sadly, at Manchester, we only get the BA A320 family, but
yeah.
It'd be nice if BA could send in some bigger planes every once in a while.
Maybe ad hoc, you might get a triple come in or something.
Well, the first BA wide body I ever flew was the A380, and that was to Madrid. Do you remember when they did?
Yes.
Did you fly on them or?
No, we're at the moment we're either licensed for the 350 or the 380. So I'm on the 350.
Okay.
Because you have a certain amount of licenses, you can't have more than 3.
Okay.
So I've got the 320 family. The 777 and the 78 are classed as one. So I've got the 78 and the triple. Yeah, they're very, very similar. And then you either get the 350 or the 380.
I wonder why they're classed as the same. Is it just because the exits and the way it works is the same?
I think so. I mean, it all comes from the Civil Aviation Authority. So they, deemed that those two are close enough.
One of the things that are advertised about the 78 is how comfortable it is to work and travel on. I've never been on a Dreamliner personally, but do you think these modern airliners are nicer on like fatigue and nicer on jet lag and stuff?
Definitely.
Is that something that's improved over the years?
Definitely, yes. I think the newer aircraft are definitely more. You don't tend to feel as tired when you get off them. I mean, from a crew member's perspective, obviously that's quite important. But yeah, I don't feel as tired when I get off sort of the 78 or the 350, and even the 777, you know. But whereas historically, when I flew before, you used to quite, you know, your jet lag was a bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they're definitely flying's getting healthier with modern technology.
Yeah, no smoking as well. I assume smoking would have been a thing when you were.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that was horrible.
I mean, I know, like, smoke is one thing, but the fire risk as well. Surely everyone's got lighters and actual flames. And
I mean, things like that are much better these days. You know, you don't have this. I don't think it was so much the not, like you said, not just the smoke, but the fire risk. People putting cigarettes out in the toilets, maybe in the bins with paper towels in there, and all of that kind of thing. But we've got different risks nowadays. I mean, you have to be really careful with things like lithium-ion batteries. You know, don't go to sleep and leave your battery or your iPad plugged in. You know, we do announcement for stuff like that.
Why is that?
Because they can self-ignite, lithium-ion battery. Yeah, it's something that we're trained in. So we always advise passengers, if you're going to go to sleep, unplug it. And if you don't unplug it and I'm walking around, I will unplug it for you, because it is dangerous. So you've swapped one danger for a more modern danger.
Yeah.
But it's just things that you have to be aware of.
And lucky for BA, they have the charging ports in the seats anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
You just use that. But you're trained to deal with fires. How does that training happen? Do you have like a little airplane that you put a fire out of, or?
Sort of, yeah. We've got various mock-ups in our training facility. So we've got, like you say, an aircraft mock-up where we do the routines, because we all have a role to play in a fire. So we practice the fire drill, and you have to don the smoke hoods, which are quite hard to work in because you've got a full smoke hood on. So
what is that?
It's a personal breathing device, so that you can fight the fire and you can go into a smoke-filled environment without it causing damage. So you have to learn how to do that. You have to operate the fire extinguishers. You have to know how to deal with electrical fires, oven fires, obviously seat fires. So you would use a different extinguisher for different fires and things like that. And then we've got a really a new facility where we actually put out real fires. So we'll put out a laptop fire, a phone fire, an oven fire, or a seat fire.
You must be trained to deal with so much. Like, so much could go wrong in, like, obviously they're very safe airliners these days. I know it's probably the most safest form of travel.
Absolutely.
But because you're so isolated, you've got to deal with things like, I guess, medical, and also just like maybe people having like panic attacks, or and also, like you said, mechanical issues or fire. I guess, and like the training is quite extensive, and you're covering all these different things.
Everything. Yeah. You end up being multi-talented. I was going to say multi-talented. I wouldn't consider myself talented, but yeah, you have to deal with medical, you have to deal with fire, you have to learn about hijack, you have to learn about somebody giving birth, you have to deal with heart attacks, you have to be a bit of a psychologist sometimes, a therapist. So we wear a lot of different hats. And I must admit, as far as medicals are concerned, with long haul flying, most flights I'll get something where somebody has some kind of medical incident, albeit it could be a very mild one. Fainting is the most common on long haul. I think if people have been up very early, or they maybe haven't eaten correctly, or they don't drink enough water, then they get up from their seat, go to use the bathroom, and they'll pass out. So
you'll always make sure that they're most comfortable. I think having a walk and stuff, is that still like advised for passengers, or?
Yeah, I think just to be sensible, really. Don't sit in one position. When you're going to the bathroom, have a little walk around, have a stretch. Keeping your fluids up is really important. So just looking after yourself. I mean, a lot of people wear the flight socks as well, and do little exercises. I think on our in-flight entertainment, we've got a well-being section where It gives you like exercises that you can do in your seat.
Oh, that's great.
And lots of tips and advice. And I think the biggest thing is never be afraid to ring that call bell. Because I think if you're in a window seat, particularly on a long haul, and you've got two people next to you who might be asleep, never be afraid to ring that call bell and ask for something, you know, or if you need to get out and have a stretch or whatever. Because I think some people are frightened of ringing the call bell because they might get, you know, a nasty look, but that's not what we're like. You know, we would much rather you ring the call bell.
I don't think I've ever seen that thing on the in-flight entertainment because I'm always just watching the map. Just like, there's that city, there's that city, there's that city.
There's actually so much to watch on there nowadays.
There's
so many different things on there. You actually don't have enough flight time to watch it all.
I remember the last one, I had the map open on mine where it was like all the cities below us.
Yeah.
And then Sam had the other map view where you could see like the altitude and speed and all that. We just watched that for hours on end.
It's so entertaining, isn't it? Just knowing where you are.
Yeah.
I think it's really good as well if people like you that like to take photos and video, because you can then take a photo and then know exactly where you are from the map. And
then use the Wi-Fi to get online as well. Do you ever have a language barrier? Do you ever get passengers on who just don't speak a word of English?
Yes, we do. And we do have flights where we have international cabin crew that are based. For example, we've got crew based in Mexico, we've got crew based in India, crew based in some of the Middle Eastern countries. So they will operate with the London-based crew. So we might have 2 international cabin crew on, which is so helpful with the language barrier and the culture. I mean, we have cultural briefs, so we know the culture of each destination we're going to. So we try and keep ourselves up to date with the latest trends in that particular part of the world. But there's always the occasion when you just need an international cabin crew that can speak the language. And apart from the international cabin crew, we have crew that come from all over the world who work out of London, and there's virtually every language on the planet is covered at some point or another. So it's very helpful. So
with being cabin crew, do you have like regular training that you have to do, like every so many, how is it? Regular?
It's every 12 months we do recurrent training, and you have to pass, and you have to go through all your door drills, or your fire drills, or your medical equipment. You basically go through everything over 2 days, and you have to pass. And it gets tougher every year. I think the older I get, the more I find it difficult, because I still remember old routines and old locations and different pieces of equipment. So
I mean, it's getting safer, and I assume there's more things that you have to watch out for as well. Like I said, the lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, that's a big thing at the moment.
Is that a recent sort of big thing that you're looking out for, or is that?
Yeah, I think from, I mean, I can't even remember when we started carrying things like iPhones and everything, but if you think about it, most people have 2 or 3 items with them with a lithium-ion battery in it. So you've either got a phone or an iPad or a laptop, or, you might even have 4, I don't know how many. Smartwatch, everything. Anything that's got one of those batteries in, because they are, they're quite, I don't want to say dangerous, but they are dangerous. I think it's just being mindful of a lithium-ion battery. Having that awareness is half the battle. Because if you get a battery in a phone or an iPad that ignites, the only way to put it out is to immerse it in water, and you have to leave it in water. And if you can imagine on an aircraft, if one of those goes, it could spread very quickly.
I can imagine, yeah.
So you have to deal with it fast.
Have you ever had a scare on an airplane that you've been on where you've had to deal with something?
How long have you got? Yeah, I've had lots of things over the years. I think anyone that flies for a long time, you're going to get things. But, it's, as a lot of pilots tell you, you will get odd things, but it's when you get the Swiss cheese and you have loads of things that end in something quite disastrous. I think that's so rare. So rare.
Yeah. So it's super rare to have any actual event that you have to attend to, but sometimes you might get something that's a bit worrying, and you have to at least make
you have to be alert.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had lots of drills. I've had fire drills. I've had more medicals than I care to mention. But we have a backup with medicals. A lot of people don't realise that we are trained in CPR and prescription only medication. There's lots of things that we can do that the everyday person on the street can't do. And I'm always amazed at how highly trained we actually are. And you use it when you least expect it, not just on an aircraft. I mean, I tend to go into automatic mode. I had a medical on my last 2 flights, and I just happened to be the first person on the scene. And it's so automatic because your training is that good and you do it so often. I mean, practicing CPR every single 12 months, you know, we actually do it on a dummy, and you practice it and you practice it and you practice it. You know, so many different things that it does become very automatic. But I think when people say you're frightened of flying, I always remember being told once that you're more likely to die from a kick from a donkey than you are in an aircraft incident. I mean, how rare is getting kicked by a donkey? Let's be fair.
You're doing something wrong if you're getting kicked by a donkey.
Exactly.
So you mentioned earlier that you live up here in sort of Cheshire area. And are you based at Manchester then? How does that work?
No, I'm based at London. I was based at Manchester when we had a base here many years ago, but I'm based at London, so I basically commute down to Heathrow. You
fly each time, do you?
I do a mix of flying, driving, or get the train, depending on my roster.
Wow.
And I'm very familiar with a certain hotel chain near Heathrow,
yeah.
which is my second home.
Yeah.
So if I'm on an early flight, I'll go down to London the day before and stay in a very nice hotel
near
Heathrow. And then, like I say, I either drive, fly, or train, depending.
It's very similar to Captain Mark, how he was saying he lives in Newcastle and he travels down to Manchester each time he has to fly. You're up here, travelling down there, probably a similar journey time as well.
I mean, I don't know if he flies from Newcastle. I think he tends to drive mostly.
I think, yeah.
I don't know if there's flights from Manchester to
that'd
Newcastle.
Be great, though.
It'd be dead handy for him, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, people say to me, how do you commute? I mean, I've commuted for so many years. It just becomes second nature. And, you know, when I first started flying, I lived 4 miles from the airport. It was like 10 minutes in the car, whereas now it can be 4.5 hours in the car. But you just get used to it. You just build it into your schedule and you just make sure you're well organised. And you leave plenty of time.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah. And you have lots of days off at once, don't you? But that doesn't translate to just a big stretch and go on holiday and have a good time.
No, you tend to pace yourself on your days off. I mean, I always call it landing day. My husband will tell you there's certain things I need to eat on landing day and there's certain things I need to do on landing day, which is normally just get my joggers on and chill out. And then I always, if I come back from a long haul, I tend to go in a complete coma when I go to sleep. But then on day 2, you start to, you know, come round a bit and you can do your normal activities. I think most people, I personally find I bounce back quite quickly. But I think that's because I automatically try and go back onto local time as quickly as possible. And I do the same when I'm en route. So if I go to LA, like I've just done, obviously that's an 8-hour time change. I will try and stay up and stay awake until at least 10 p.m. US time, which obviously is 6 a.m. UK time. So sometimes I've been up 24 hours before I'll go to sleep.
That's wild.
But I find that helps me. My body clock tends to tune into that.
And is there like a fatigue management like aspect to it as well, similar to what pilots do, where they kind of have to be, because, you know, you might see on the face, I guess, cabin crew, oh, you're just serving tea and biscuits, but you've got a lot of responsibility in it. You've got to be alert and
huge amounts.
So have you got to be like switched on and you can't be too tired?
The flight duty periods are very similar to flight crew. I don't think there's a lot of difference between ours and theirs. There's a slight difference, obviously, but and that's all regulated from, EASA and the Civil Aviation Authority. So I have to make sure that my crew have the right amount of rest for the length of flight, the right amount of rest down route, because you have to have so many hours down route, depending on the flights that you've just done. And then we're all responsible individually for how many hours we can do in a month, how many hours we do in a year. And obviously our scheduling department keep a log of, that's an automatic thing. So they know how many hours we've done in a year. Flying hours, that is. You can't do more than 900 flying hours in a year.
And what happens if you had, same with like pilots, like a bad night's sleep, or you weren't feeling too good that morning?
Yeah, you report that and you deem whether you're fit to fly. And if you're not fit to fly, then you don't fly. You know, even if it's just like you say, down to a sleep deprivation or fatigue. If you've had a disturbed night's rest in a hotel, for example, or if we have a set wake-up call, hotels down route, they wake us up an hour before pickup. So if, for example, you got your wake-up call, but then the flight was delayed and they hadn't adjusted that wake-up call, you're on the clock from that time. So if your flight's delayed 4 hours, you've then got to think, well, hang on a minute, we're already on duty. How many hours work can we actually do? But then if we get a certain amount of bunk rest, that can extend our duty period. It's all quite complicated.
It is, but it's very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you can it's a legality.
Yeah.
You have to, adhere to that. And it's something that we're all very tuned into. And if I get an extended delay, once we're already on board an aircraft, the captain and I will liaise and work out, make sure we've got all the timings right, make sure we can still continue to operate, because you have to look at how long the duty day is going to be in total with the published delay that you've already got on that trip.
Right.
So, yeah, we all help each other out and we double check things, to make sure we've got it right. So, but it is quite complicated.
And do you have like people on standby in case somebody falls ill or somebody's fatigued?
Yeah, we have a thing. We have two kinds of standby. We have airport standby or home standby, and you have a different call out time. So if you're on airport standby, you're in the building, in report centre, in your uniform with your bags ready to go, and you'll do so many hours. It's normally 6 hours on airport, and that would be like you'll get a call on your phone and they'll say, yeah, immediate report. And I always say, where am I going? Sometimes they tell me, sometimes they don't. Because then you can just mentally think, I'm either doing a long haul or short haul, or you can quickly phone home and say, been called out for a long haul. And then if you're on home standby, that's a longer block, but you have to be able to get to the airport within a 2-hour period. So you might get a call at 4 o'clock for a 6 o'clock report. So you've got 4 hours. But they could technically call you at 2 o'clock for a 4 o'clock call out. And you just have to be ready. If you're on home standby, it's a case of, for me, makeup done, uniform hanging up, bag packed, short haul bag, long haul bag, option bag.
Wow.
So that I can just change it around really, really quickly. And then once you get the call, say, for example, I got one recently for a Buenos Aires. They phoned me at 2 p.m. I think the report time was something like 7 p.m. So, and I was in a hotel at Heathrow, and in my car I had my short haul bag, my long haul bag, my options bag. So once they called me and I had plenty of time, I got my bag organised for long haul, managed to have a nap, and then went actually into crew report centre.
It helps to be organised then, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, it's probably the same in the cabin as well. You've got like such a strict routine, and you've got like specific places where everyone has to go.
Yeah.
I assume that's quite strict, where they can't just leave a bag anywhere. It's got to go
No.
set place.
Yeah, everything has to be secured, stowed away.
Yeah.
In an approved stowage. And that's why when we tell passengers, your bag has to go here or it has to go there, that's because it's in an approved stowage for weight and all of that sort of thing. And in the galleys, everything has to be, a trolley has to be brake on, latches down, door closed, so that you've got like several backup systems if you hit turbulence or whatever. You don't want that trolley rolling out and going down a cabin.
No.
Because obviously that would be quite dangerous.
They're quite heavy as well, aren't they?
Very.
I see them pushing them, when the
Yeah.
plane's climbing as well, or
Yeah, on a
changing them.
short haul flight, when you're getting the trolleys out very quickly,
Yeah.
they can be quite heavy. But we always have 2 crew normally on those trolleys.
Do you ever do any really short flights?
Manchester and back.
You do Manchester? Yeah.
Yeah, Manchester and back, 35 minutes normally.
They get a lot done in them 35
they
minutes,
do,
don't they?
Yeah. Well, I came home the other day as a passenger, and I treated myself to an upgrade, which I do sometimes. And they did afternoon tea and coffee, drink from the bar, and cleared in all in 30 minutes.
I love that flight.
I
It's
love
such
that
a good flight.
afternoon tea.
Yeah. The little water and the breakfast bar that you get
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Yeah, really nice. Yeah.
yeah. It's nice, but very quick.
The approach when they're on 27s at Heathrow, if you're on the right hand side, you get
Yeah.
London underneath you on a clear
Fantastic
day.
view, isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
And you
it's-
bank round just at the right time, so
Yeah.
you can see the Shard
Yeah.
and Tower Bridge and
Yeah.
House of Parliament.
My-
You've got a clear day. It's lovely.
My phone's camera roll just gets
Yeah.
spammed. I'm just like picture, like all the pictures. All
I'm exactly the same. I always pick a window seat, and I always pick the right-hand side
Yeah.
for that very reason.
Yeah.
And also coming in here at Manchester, I can normally pick out various landmarks and my house sometimes if
Yeah.
I'm on the right side of the aircraft.
Wow. Are you a fan of special liveries by any chance on planes? Did you like the?
Yeah, I did
The BA
actually.
ones.
Yeah, I loved all the special liveries. Yeah, I think that was a really nice thing to do, to celebrate our heritage. I think that's one of the things about BA is we've got this incredible heritage, and we were always quintessentially, I can't say the word, quintessentially a British airline, but we're now so multicultural, and we embrace everything that involves, but we do retain that little bit of everybody says if we're going to have a cup of tea on an aircraft, it's got to be on a BA aircraft because we make the best cup of tea, and I think that kind of nails it.
Yeah.
We are a historic heritage airline, but we're also a very modern, up-to-date, multicultural airline as well.
Still have that class as well.
Hope so.
Yeah. I remember on that BA Madrid flight on the A380, and the chap who did the announcement stuff, the cabin crew guy, had the most British accent. He sounded like proper deep baritone voice, and welcome aboard this British Airways. Like, yes, this is the BA I know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, my husband used to travel extensively around the world with his business, and he had a horrendous few days. I can't even remember where he was. I think it was Manila or somewhere like that. And he said the minute he stepped over the threshold on the BA Jumbo, and the crew member said to him, I think you need a gin and tonic. And he said, the minute I stepped over the threshold, it was like, I'm already home. And we get that a lot from, especially our regular passengers.
Yeah.
They'll say the minute we're on board, we're already home.
Yeah. That's
So
true. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a really nice thing.
It's very
to hear.
British. What was your first flight? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah, it was the 1610 Newcastle on a Trident 1E.
Okay, not the longest flight then.
No.
On that, was it nerve-wracking?
Horrendously so, yes.
Really?
Yeah. I think I was a very different person back then. I was a very, very shy, timid 18-year-old. And I got this job of my dreams, and I didn't want to mess anything up. And obviously I had my parents saying, well, she'll be back in 10 minutes, she's not going to do it. So I felt quite a lot of pressure on myself. And I think I'd a bit of a long story, but before I got the job in a very different way to how most people get the job. So I was already working for British Airways in forward planning. I'd come from sixth form college. I wanted to work for BA. It was the only company I ever wanted to work for. And I got 2 job offers with BA. One was as a general clerk, and the other one was a forward planning clerk. And one of the offices was at Heathrow and one was in Hounslow. And I chose the job based on the nicest office. So the one in Hounslow had carpet and it had a tea lady, and we used to get served coffee in the afternoon and all of that. So I chose that job, and I was 17 at the time. And then fast forward 9 months, and we were on the executive floor, my office. And there were all these people coming past in like nice suits and everything. So I ran down to the personnel department, and we all knew each other. And I said, oh, why are there all these people here? So they said, oh, we're recruiting for cabin crew. So I said to the PR manager, I went, the HR manager rather, I said, that's what I've always wanted to do. So he said, how old are you, Julie? And I said, I'm 17. So he said, when's your birthday? So I said, March the 3rd. He said, the course starts on March the 7th. You've got an interview at 4:00 this afternoon. So I literally ran to a shop called CNA, which a lot of people won't remember, bought a suit, went to Boots, got some nail polish, got some extra mascara, literally came back to the office, and in my lunch hour I painted my nails, I put my suit on, put some extra mascara on. I did no prep whatsoever apart from that. I had my interview at 4:00 that afternoon, and another girl in the office had also gone for it. She was 10 years older than me. She found out the next day that she got the job. I didn't hear anything. So I as days went by, I thought, well, I'm obviously not good enough, or I'm obviously too young, or whatever. Anyway, about a week later, I think the guy's name was Bob McCulloch, and I really hope he's still around and he realises what an impact he had on my life. He called me into the office and he said, right, you had your interview. I'm sorry it's taken us so long. And I was just waiting for those words, on this occasion, you haven't got the job. So he said, but I'm pleased to say you've got the job and you start your training on the 7th of March. And he said, I have gone as guarantor for you and told the company that you are mature enough, you're right for the job and everything else. He said, please don't let me down. And sure enough, I got the job. And so I had that pressure as well that I was putting on myself, that this had to work because I couldn't let everybody down. And I turned up for the Newcastle flight and I was so nervous, so nervous. And the crew were incredible. And one of them I'm still in contact with today. I'm also still in contact with my trainer, a lovely lady called Marion Perks. She won't mind me mentioning her name. She's an absolute treasure. And lovely Wendy was my purser on my first flight. And we did this Newcastle flight, and I remember serving everybody. And we got to Newcastle, and I was on such a high. And they said to me, right, Julie, you're the new girl. You need to go to the chuck wagon and get the sausage butties for all the crew. And that was it. I thought, I've arrived. I'm not only flying for British Airways, but I'm also going to get the sausage butties for the crew. And that was it, really. I never, ever looked back from that day.
Did you say you were scared of flying at this stage?
Yep.
How did that work?
It just vaporized. It completely vaporized. I got on the flight, and the first takeoff was pretty nerve-wracking because I was down the back of a Trident, and you've got 3 engines around you, and it was pretty noisy and everything. But it was just one of those things that once I started the job, it just felt like the most natural thing in the world. And it still feels like that today. I feel like I'm where I'm meant to be. And I know that probably sounds a bit cheesy and a bit sort of fluffy, but I actually get quite emotional about flying because I feel like that's where I'm meant to be.
So between 17 and 18 was from when you got the job offer to where you actually started flying. That's not a long period of time.
It was just a few weeks, literally a few weeks. And then the training started. The training was, from memory, I think it was about 5.5 or 6 weeks. And like I say, one of my trainers was this lovely lady called Marion, who really took me under her wing. And I think because I was so young compared with the other people on my course, they didn't have many people at 18. They normally like to take people about 21 who had a bit more life skills. But I was really nurtured and looked after by my peers. And I think I learnt my craft from all of them. And I'm really grateful to this day to each and every one of them, because I don't think I'd be the crew member that I am today, because I pride myself on doing things properly. And I don't always get it right. I'm far from perfect, but I really try my best to make things go well, And I've never forgotten the advice that they gave me all those years ago.
What was the training like? Was that strenuous or is it hard? Or
do you know, looking back now, it probably wasn't hard. I think it's all a bit of a blur, if I'm honest. But I just remember going through it and thinking, I'm learning things here that I never dreamed I would be learning about. You know, like I've said to you earlier about fire drills and medicals and doing CPR and all of that. And it was just such a whirlwind. And you bond with all these other people on your course, and you know, you remain friends for years with these people. And it's just it's a really unique experience going through the training to be crew.
What was the hardest part of the training?
Remembering where everything was. I think for me, I'm not the best, as my family will tell you, at remembering where everything is. So remembering where this certain type of fire extinguisher was, and where the oxygen masks were, and all of that. But the best part is, without a shadow of a doubt, is going down the slide.
Yeah.
That's the best part of training.
Still have that today, don't they?
Yeah, they still do.
So what's that you have? So the doors, when you open a door, does that automatically deploy a slide, or is it you've got to arm the door or something like that? How does that work?
Yeah, what happens is when we push back off stand, we arm the doors.
And that's why they say, right?
Yeah, you either say, if you're at Airbus, or certain Airbuses, we say arm, certain aircraft we say doors to automatic and cross-check. So what you're doing is you're pushing the lever into the armed or the automatic position, and then you're checking the checks for that particular door, because they're all different, and then you cross-check the other door with the other person. So we've double-checked, we've all done it right. And then as the IFM, I then get on the phone and phone all the other doors to make sure they've all done the same. So for example, on the 350, I've got 4 sets of doors. So I'll ring doors 2, doors 3 and doors 4, make sure they're all in automatic or armed. And then we do the reverse when you come into land. But in an emergency situation, if you're opening the door and it's armed or in automatic, it's got power assist. So the minute you open that door and the handle gets to a certain place, the power assist kicks in and you hold everybody back, and then the slide will inflate, and then you do your commands and get everybody off.
Has everyone got to get off within isn't it a certain amount
of time? Yeah, each aircraft type you have to get everybody off in a certain amount of time.
Is that like just a few minutes, I guess, is it?
Normally, I think it's something like 130 seconds,
Wow.
A minute and a half. It, like I say, it varies. There's all these CAA and FAA standards that you have to be able to get people off. But I mean, you would literally in that situation just go into automatic mode.
Yeah.
And get everybody off.
So going back to the Newcastle flight, you flew it.
Yeah.
Was it almost like, I know it's only Newcastle, but did you feel like you're away from everybody and it kind of felt a bit lonely from your family and stuff, or was it just so exciting?
I think I was just euphoric.
Yeah.
And I was on such a high. I mean, I came home from that flight and it was probably, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and you would normally be thinking about going to bed. I was just wide awake. I couldn't sleep at all because I was just, it was such a huge achievement for me at that time. And I know that there's thousands of crew around the world, hundreds of thousands of crew around the world, and we've all done our first flight, and I think we all remember it. And it can be a very positive experience. It can also be a very negative experience, depending on how it goes. So I carry that feeling with me now. If I get a new entrant on their first flight, I try and make it as easy and as positive as possible, because that's the experience that I had. So you try and make it memorable. You try and take photos, try and make them feel at home, because that's exactly the experience that I had with Wendy and the rest of my crew on my first flight.
So you were sort of doing shorter flights for a while, and then did you work your way up to long haul?
I think it's kind of, I was on Eurofleet to start with, and then after 10 years picked up the Concorde license, which was within Eurofleet at the time. And then when I met my husband, I moved up to Manchester base, stayed here, and then ended up back down at Heathrow on the wide-bodied. And then a couple of years ago, we all became one fleet. So we're on everything now.
Bit of everything. Yeah.
Bit of everything.
Yeah. Too much choice, isn't it?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. But whereas back then you were kind of limited to Well, I suppose you were only licensed to certain aircraft anyway, weren't you?
I mean, I started on Viscount 111 and Trident, and then as they were phased out, I picked up the 737, then the 757, then Concorde, then the 767, and then obviously the triple and the jumbo, and now the 78 and the 350. So I've got quite a wide repertoire of aircraft types.
What was probably the most emotional retirement that you had of an aircraft? Because obviously the Concorde was a big one. Were you around for when that retired? Did you do one of the last?
I was on. I was on extended maternity leave at the time with my daughter. So I know the crew that were on the last flights, and and it was very, very emotional. And I did shed a few tears from afar. But I think because I was off at that time, it wasn't as emotional for me as when the 747 went, because I was actually doing something like we're doing now at the end of the 747 with the filming and being at the end of the runway when that went off. So I think I probably found the 747 more emotional. But I did stand at the end of the runway when the last Concorde came into Manchester, and obviously it's still here, and that was quite emotional, to say the least.
Did you love the jumbo as well, I guess?
Yeah, the jumbo was just... I think the jumbo's got a really special place in my heart. I loved flying on Concorde. It was an absolute privilege, and I never get over how privileged I was, because so few people managed to do it. And people would say to me, was your favourite the Concorde or was it 747s? And I think they're very close, and I think maybe the jumbo just very slightly takes, was probably my most emotional when the 747 retired.
And what really made the jumbo jet special for you?
Oh my goodness, it was the one aircraft that I've said in a previous interview that I always wanted to fly on as BA crew. I mean, Concorde I kind of fell into, but the 747 was the one that you watch when you're growing up. And when I was on short haul, I used to watch 747s and think, yeah, one day I'll do that, and then when I did do my training for the 747, I just fell in love with that aircraft, and I knew it like the back of my hand. I knew every inch of that aircraft from a cabin crew perspective. I flew on it a lot. I used to bid to fly on it. It just was a workhorse, really. And I know that newer aircraft are the same, and a newer aircraft will take a place in my heart, moving forward. But I think I always wanted to be British Airways crew on the 747, and I'm really proud that I managed to do it.
Queen of the skies,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
What was the first flight you did on a 747?
A Vegas.
To Vegas.
Yeah, a Vegas flight, which was interesting.
Yeah,
very much so. I actually was extra crew on it, so I was obviously not in my normal position at the front, so I was sitting down at door 4 right, and I remember telling my husband and anyone that will listen this story. So we were trundling down the runway, and as you'll know, the wing tip on a 747 gets higher and higher and higher as you get faster and faster, and then it's quite high up as you rotate off the runway. And I remember watching it and watching the winglet and getting higher and higher and higher, and by the time we were airborne, I was in floods of tears. I was a wreck.
Yeah.
But it was just, I do find aviation very emotional, and I think it is because it's in here, so I'm a bit of a nutcase, really.
And you still get that today with the modern airliners as well.
Yeah, I still do.
Yeah.
Just it's really weird. I can't explain it, but it's just the passion for everything around my role as crew. I just love every bit of it. You
live around here now?
I do, yes.
Is there a reason why you live up here? And is just
actually.
Your family up here? Is it?
I met my husband on the Manchester night stop many years ago when I was on short haul. So because they had a base up here, it was easier for me to move up north than it was for him to move south. So that's how I ended up here. But obviously that base closed, and now we're all back down in Heathrow. because I was so used to the travelling anyway, because my family were still down south there. My parents, I managed to get them up here before COVID. So, but all my children live up here. So even though 2 of my older children were originally born in London, they very rarely go back. They normally stay up here. So my family's now in my adopted second home up here in Cheshire, Manchester.
You do have social media, don't you?
I do, yeah. I've got a little Instagram account, Concorde Julie. So please get anyone to follow me.
Yeah, you're quite popular over there. You do your wingtip Wednesdays as well over there as well.
Yeah, we do wingtip Wednesdays, flight deck Fridays. I do stupid ones like Sentimental Saturday or Supersonic Sunday or...
Oh, Supersonic Sunday, I like that one. Yeah.
But I'm rapidly running out of photographs because obviously I only had so many photographs from back in the day. But I did carry my camera from day one, so I'm quite lucky that I've got a record from day one.
That's some good advice, isn't it? If you are getting into this. I mean, these days, everyone's got their phones.
Exactly. I mean, these days, they've got it easy, really.
Did you have just like a little point and shoot camera?
I actually had an Olympus trip. I don't know if you ever remember them. They were quite famous because of a photographer. I think it was David Bailey, I think that's what his name was. I can't remember. But yeah, it was quite a compact little camera, but obviously 35mm. And I used to take that from day one. I think my dad bought it for me just before I started flying, because I've always been into photography. Not that I'm very good at it, but I've always taken lots of photos. And I did take my video camera as well. I did an around the world Concorde charter, which is another long story, but
wow.
I did take that with me around the world. And
I'd love to see that.
Got some footage of that. Some of it got corrupted by the humidity, unfortunately, but I've got some bits of it.
There you go. Every reason to follow you on Instagram, right?
Yep, Instagram.
Right. I think that'll sign us off. But thank you for watching, everyone. I've been Andy on the Aviation Podcast. This has been Julie. A massive pleasure having you in. It's been amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Could have spoke for hours and hours more, but tried to keep it short and concise. Amazing. Thank you very much. I'll see you all next time.